We're thrilled to have Teresa Vanhooser, who's recently retired as of just August as the Deputy Director of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville. And while she was there, she, as a matter of fact, 35 years, and you'll see when she gets up here, she must have started when she was about 12 or 13, I figured. She assisted the director with managing almost 6,000 employees and a budget of almost $2.5 billion. So needless to say, she was very busy. We are thrilled to have her on campus. It's been a very busy morning for her. She's been able to interact with faculty and students and staff and had a tour of campus. This is her first time at Lipscomb, so I hope you'll make her feel welcome. And she will be here through lunch with us. She wants this to be very interactive, and we hope that it is. So as she presents, please think of questions that you all have. I'm sure you can think of a lot of things that you'd be interested in with regards to NASA. We're thrilled to have her. Please welcome Teresa Vanhooser.
So I'm just going to sit here, if that's okay, and it'll be a lot easier. It's either that or I'll pace, and we don't, probably not a good thing for me to pace. First of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I have had been fortunate to have an incredible career working with NASA and working in Huntsville. For those people who ask me, they're like, so you spent all 35 years in Huntsville at one center? And the answer is yes, all 35 years. But with the breadth of what we do in Huntsville and with NASA, there was never any boring times. If you ever got bored, all you had to do is look for a different project, and there was always plenty to do and plenty of exciting things to take on if you wanted to do something different. So my 35 years, I got a pretty broad perspective, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But what I wanted to focus on is that academics is really, really important, and we all know that the higher the academics, that the better job offers that we're going to get. But what I want to talk to you a little bit today is that, okay, everybody's coming out and they're making all these great grades and they're getting these jobs, then what? And so what are those special skill sets and things that you need in addition to your academics that you just graduated with that's going to help you move up or get opportunities or do things once you land the job? Because that's really important part, because there are going to be lots of people coming in to the companies that wherever you choose to go work for. But what is it that's going to set you apart from everybody else that walks in to be able to get those exciting opportunities and to be able to get that challenging work and be able to work on that team that once you got there, you thought, this is the best team ever, I want to be a part of that. And so what is it that you need to do, and what are the kinds of things and skill sets that you need in going through that? So I'm going to kind of give you my top 5. If you talk to somebody else, they may give you a different top 5, but these are based on the experiences that I had in the 35 years that I had been working at NASA. But what I'll talk to you first is that the way I led my organizations from the time I really entered within NASA to all of the leadership positions I had really were from my initial values that I was taught as a child and all the way through growing up. And that is that you treat people, everybody that you interact with respect. And so that has been that underlying value throughout my whole career, and what I believe has been that core principle that if I acted in that way and worked with people in that way, that it was that we would figure out the right working relationship and that we could to work together and have really strong teams. And so throughout this, you'll see a little bit of that filtered in, and that doesn't count as one of my top 5. That's just kind of the overarching piece of it. So the first one I want to mention to you is that when you first come into an organization, building relationships and building trust and really trying to get a good, strong network is crucial, right? Because one of the key ways that you're going to get that next opportunity is people being able to see you in the job that you are in, and that you have, and what good job you do, what your skills are in interacting with other people, what is it that you do well, and really showing and demonstrating to them and having that personal relationship so that when they need that next person to move up, or when they need that job done, that the first name that pops in their head is yours. It's like, oh, I saw so-and-so, and they were really a great part of that team, and they were very interactive, and they seemed like they really had it going for them. So maybe I'll go ask them if they'd like to take this on. That was how I got my job coming out of engineering. So I was in engineering within Marshall for the first 7 years of my career, and then I moved into a project office. And the real reason that I got that opportunity to work in that project office was because there were people that I had worked with in the job that I was in before. And so when they had an opening, the first thing, then they decided, oh, okay, we need to fill this, and we really want to fill it with somebody we know, we think that'll work good within the team. So I got the opportunity. Now, I didn't just jump on it. I went and talked to a lot of people. Okay, is this something I really want to do? It's kind of early in my option. And so I got lots of different opinions. Everywhere from, and you don't need to make that jump so fast. But I made the jump, and I went to the project office, and in that job, which was a mission manager for some of the Space Lab missions, and I know y'all are way too young to remember Space Lab, so it was just, for those who don't know, it was the pilots that flew inside the space shuttle that did all the science experiments on the space shuttle. And so my role in that is pulling all those teams together. Partners that on, taking all that and pulling it together. It was a pallet. In another case, it was a module to operate in a 14-day span once we got into space. And so what I learned from that whole experience is how critical it was to be to have a strong team, whether you are the lead of that team or whether you is crucial to every program. And team membership is really where you will help you build those relationships that I mentioned before. And because you never know when that person might be the one that's going to offer next as part of that team. Your leadership, right? Can you lead? If they ask you to lead some special part of that team or some they talked about important when you get out into the world. So if you're going to move an organization, you have to have strong leadership skills. So, taking a risk and getting out of your comfort zone is my number 3. Yes, I know the people that I work with, so I'm happy just staying right here, leave me alone, just I'll come in, do my job, and then I go home. Well, it's amazing how many people aren't ready to just kind of take that risk. Can I really do that? Is this something that I want to do? Is that in my skill set? Can I learn that? Well, I'm here to tell you that if you're willing to take a risk and to put yourself outside of your comfort zone and to get out of your box a little bit, that it is, one, it'll increase your sellability, or if you will, if you ever decide you want to change jobs, to have that breadth of experience is really critical. But it's also energizing to do something new and to learn a new skill set and to be that person that people say, well, you know, they have these basic skills, and I know that's a little bit outside, but I think they will be great at learning that. That was how I got my next job, which was in the deputy for engineering, and then from there, the deputy project managers for the Aries program, which was the launch vehicle that we were building at the time. I'm not a launch vehicle engineer. I'm not a propulsion engineer. My background is industrial engineering. And so you ask yourself, how in the world or why in the world would they pick you to be the deputy for a launch vehicle program? Well, they had a lot of launch vehicle and propulsion engineers that were already working it. What they were missing is somebody to bring that team together. And so my skill sets that I brought to the team was the ability to build a team and to strengthen the team and to bring them towards a common goal so that they were headed in the same direction, because they all had their very stovepiped into what they were doing. So you have to ask yourself, what skills are you bringing to the table? So people are always looking for something different. But had I not been open to being able to take that on, that's an experience that I would have never gotten. But for me, it was extremely rewarding in getting to work on a totally different kind of program that I'd worked on any time before. And now to be able to say that I worked on that launch vehicle, even though the program got canceled, a lot of it's still part of the new space launch system that NASA's working on now. And so we transitioned a lot of the hardware that was being built before onto this new system. So to be able to say that you were a part of that and a part of moving the space program forward into the exploration, the next step in exploration was pretty exciting. So you always have to be willing to take that extra risk and to put yourself out there and to take on new challenges. Number 4 will seem very obvious to you, but it's to be confident. Now, I didn't say cocky, but be confident in your skill sets and be able to communicate what value you're bringing. I will tell you that in the environment that I worked in, unfortunately, there was not a lot of women, and we're working on that piece of it, but there wasn't. But what I also saw is that seemed to be a trait more for my women engineers, is that they did a great job, and in most cases were at or above the guys, but yet they wouldn't apply for jobs. Or even when they would apply for them, their interview skills, and it just, we have a tendency, and I'll speak for myself because I was the same way, is that to sell ourselves. They're not going to know how good you are if you can't talk about it and if you can't demonstrate to them what skills you're bringing to the table. So when I say confident but not cocky, you need to be confident in the skills that you're bringing and be able to communicate those, but not to the I'm better than everybody else kind of a syndrome, right? Because that's like, pick me because, you're putting down somebody else. But be very confident in the skills that you're bringing to the table and be able to talk about what those skills are and how that is going to help you do the job that they need to do. I'm going to mention to you is that to take control of your own career. And I say that because a lot of people will sit and wait for somebody to ask them to do something, or you'll go ask for advice and you'll get this person says this and this person says that. In the end, the only person responsible for where you want to go and for your career is yourself. And so many people that I saw were basing it on, well, so-and-so said I shouldn't go do that. And I'm like, well, what do you say? What is it that you want to do? And they're like, well, I really think I can, and I really think I want to give it a try. I said, well, in the end, you can't point your finger at anybody but yourself when it comes to making this decision. So if you will look back on it and say, I wish I had, then you better do. Because that's really what is going to count in the end, is about what you decide to do, not about pointing to somebody else and blaming somebody else. Well, I would have been doing that except for so-and-so told me that that probably wasn't a good idea. If I hadn't have taken that first job as in the mission management office and gone with some of the advice that I was receiving from then my current supervisor, I'm not sure I'd be sitting here today. I'm not sure I would have landed as a deputy director. But it was making that choice and deciding that it was worth the risk for me to step into that job, knowing that they wouldn't ask me to do this job if they didn't think I could do it, and if they weren't willing to provide the training that I needed to be able to do that job. And so I took that risk, and I went into it with the confidence that I can do this, and with knowing that I was the one that made the decision, and if it didn't work out, that I was the only one to blame, but if it did work out, good for me. And so those are the 5 points that I wanted to make sure that to talk to you about today. It's really a lot about self-introspection. Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And what your expectations are. There are a lot of folks that I work with that all they want to do is be a discipline engineer, and they don't want to manage people. They don't want to do, budgets. They don't want to do all these other things, and that's great because we need all different types of folks to be able, because if I didn't have those folks, we couldn't get the job done. But if you're really looking to make those next steps up, or to make yourself marketable for future jobs. People don't stick to jobs 35 years like I did much anymore. People move around a lot. And so the experiences that you get and the opportunities that you take advantage of are really up to you, and you have to take that control. So I will just share with you, I don't know how much, if any of you read the bio, and I wouldn't have if I were you, but but I have 2 daughters, 27 and 25, and both are Auburn graduates, and I know, but in Alabama that's the best school, so it's so anyway, one of them lives here in Nashville, the other one lives in Madison, Alabama. One's graduated with a nursing degree. The other one's graduating with an education. So I didn't get any engineers out of the 2 of them, but that's okay. They're very successful, and some of these same messages are exactly what I tell them especially when they ask me for advice. I said I can tell you or give you, tell you what I think, but in the end, it's your decision because you're the one that has to live with it. So anyway, that's what I have, and what I really wanted to know is what do you all want to know, and what kind of questions do you have? Because I know we have everything from freshmen to seniors, those that are just trying to make it through. And I will tell y'all, I was not the best student, and you can still get through it. And so I made it through. Sometimes I think by the skin of my teeth, but it's a persistence. And sticking to it and just making your mind up that that's what you're going to do. And so there were many times when I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore, and you just keep doing it. And in the life lesson that it teaches you, that if you're persistent and that if you decide what you want to do and do it, then it opens up lots of doors for you. So questions?
In terms of your points about building that perfect team, I wonder if you have any experiences you could perhaps detail about how important it is to take a team that you're given, yourself you don't select, and then building that team up to greatness, as opposed to like building a team from scratch that's hand-selected by you.
Yeah, and I've done both, by the way. So, and early on was the one that, okay, here's your team, because we work in a matrix organization at Marshall, and that means that the managers, the first line managers decide who's going to work what, and so you don't get to go pick your team. And so it was a matter of getting handed. I will say the first and most important part is that each team member feels valued for what they're bringing to the table, right? So my design engineers were not any more important than my ops engineers. My engineers weren't any more important than my scientists, and that everybody had something to bring to the table, and that when we came to the table, that we all needed to be respectful and listen to what their points of view were. I think that is probably the number one lesson that I would say from building, from running a team and from operating as a team is that everybody has a valuable point and everybody's not the most outspoken. So sometimes you have to go solicit ideas from people. So you're like, okay, well, I've heard from this side of the room, but I haven't heard from this side. So-and-so, what do you think about where we're headed? And draw people out, because not everybody's extroverted like me and going to share their opinion regardless of whether it's asked for or not. And you have to ask them. And a lot of times they have the best ideas because they've given it a lot of thought. And so they've taken everything in that everybody said and molded around in their head and then been able to share those ideas. So I will say that's the number one lesson is that every person, regardless of what they do and regardless of what discipline they are, is a valuable member of your team. And that included my communications people, my PAO folks, the folks that were, whether they were sitting console, and that wasn't going to happen until 2 years down the road. Everybody had a place at the table and were part of the decision making. Now, does somebody ultimately have to be the decision maker? Absolutely. And you have to make decisions. So you can't leave the team hanging, because you got all these people kind of looking at you going, is she ever going to decide something? And you can't do that. You have to listen, and you have to take in all of it, and then you have to make a decision and move on. I'm a big proponent of having a diverse team. That is so critically important. And so, yeah, you would think, okay, you got discipline diversity. Yeah, that's great. But diversity shows itself in a whole lot of different ways. And I'll pick scientists and engineers. Don't think anything the same at all. The scientists are all about all these options and keeping things hanging till the very end, and I might discover this later, so I might need to change that. And engineers are like, I got to have a design, and you got to stop. And I can't do that anymore. And you're not going to have any hardware to do your science on if you don't stop changing. And so they have all these different mentalities. Men and women think differently. Duh, right? But it's so important because they do think differently. You get the best ideas when you have a diverse team that comes to the table so that they can share all those ideas and you can get to a best solution rather than everybody who thinks the same, like everybody who graduated from Lipscomb University or everybody that graduated from Auburn University. Or, if you get all these people, then they were trained the same way and they think the same way and they have the same ideas, and you're never going to get anything new. And so I think that's another big is the diversity of the team. I didn't always get to pick that, But you can always have your way of going and talking to some of the managers and saying, that this person's great, but can you spare this one for a little while, or this person, or I need somebody that's like this. And then you have to let them know they're valued. I mean, thank them for what they do for you, appreciate the time and effort that they put in. People will go to bat for you if they know that you appreciate what they do for you.
I probably missed your speech part of, did you go straight to like NASA after you graduated, or what was that transition to your first job?
Yeah, NASA was my first and only job. And so I graduated from Tennessee Tech a long time ago and went straight to NASA. They came in and were interviewing at Tennessee Tech, and so they offered me a job and I took it. Yeah.
I was wondering, because that applies to like a lot of us, because, that's probably everyone's biggest goal is to say, become seniors or even just start college, like, I'm supposed to finish and figure out a job,
Yeah, and it's not, there's just as many that don't stay with the same company as stay with the same company. I had a great time. When people, I loved every part of my career. Did I have bad days? Of course I did. But in general, I loved the work, and there was, I loved the passion of the people for what they were doing because they just loved what they did. And so it was great. But yeah, I was there for the whole time, the whole 35 years. So, just a minute.
So, this is a slightly awkward question, but sometimes not awkward, it's an awkward phrase in my mind. So, you were in charge of your team, but what if your team had to interact with another team in order to get a job done? What was those interactions like? Were they always smooth?
Not always. For those of you who know much about NASA know that the Marshall Space Flight Center and the Johnson Space Center didn't always see eye to eye. And so it was really important to build those relationships across too. So what was very important is that they saw me with a positive relationship with another center or with another organization. I'm a firm believer that the leader sets the tone. If the leader doesn't get along with organization X or Y, then it almost like it gives permission for everybody else to get along. And so it was one of the things that I focused on a lot, because we interacted with the Johnson Space Center and the Kennedy Space Center a lot, because of course Johnson was the flight control center for the vehicle, and then all of our stuff got integrated together at the Kennedy Space Center. So the relationships there had to be really strong and really positive, and it goes back to, again, their job that they do is just as important as the job that we do, because it takes all of those together to be able to have a successful mission.
What if the other team was saying this was like a private contracting company that was...
Now, they're the same, because we're all one big happy family. True, because I mean, NASA, the civil service do some things in-house, but we don't have the capacity to do everything in-house. So our support contractors and our prime contractors are just members of our team. They just get paid through a different route, but they have to be an integral part to being a part of the team. And sometimes it's a little harder because you don't influence their pay structure or anything like that, but you can influence how they feel about being a part of your team. But there was a lot of people that had to work together from multiple contractors in addition to the civil service. And a lot of times there was this civil service contractor deal going on too. And I'm like, I'm having none of that, right? Everybody has a job to do, and everybody is important to get the job done. So we're not having the anybody's better than anybody else kind of thing. Okay.
So you said you went to NASA right out of college, and you didn't necessarily do the best in school. What all did you do that had you like stand out above the rest?
I think a lot of the things I just shared with you, right, is that that I was eager. I was not afraid to take on a challenge. I was very interactive with the team members that I worked with from the time I walked in. I had a lot of great mentors, which, by the way, if you all don't have, need to and you don't have to call them that, but people who advise you and help you and let you brainstorm a problem, those are mentors is what I call them, that kind of help you with the lay of the land, and this is a good organization, this is not so good, and that kind of stuff. So I had folks that were that for me and helped me navigate the path, but part of it is just that you work hard, you get along with people. If you can't get along with people, it's going to be tough to go very far, because it is all about, you don't do very many things on your own. You have to be able to interact well with people. I had good social skills, and so I was a really good team builder. I was really good at bringing people together and getting to a solution where there was a lot of finger pointing going on. So I think it was around that aspect of getting people to work together that was my strengths, that helped me move into more management and more of a leadership style. So, other questions?
What was your favorite project you've ever worked on? Like, is there any really cool something?
So my favorite thing that I did was the Microgravity Science Lab mission, which was STS 83 and 94 for those who know anything about the shuttle program. But and the reason it was my favorite is I owned the budget, and I was able to see it from beginning to end. So from the time we pulled all the instruments together, integrated it, and flew it, and brought it back to the ground was like a 5-year period of time. And I got to see that whole thing and manage through that whole activity. And so that was pretty incredible, because the scientists up front were like, I don't know if we'll ever get to fly. I don't know if we're going to get what we need, and I'm not getting my requirements met, and yada, 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 yada. And then to see them in the end and going down in the ops room and seeing their faces when they are getting the data in from the shuttle, and they're just like ecstatic and saying this is like their career, because they've spent their whole career building this instrument to be able to fly, to be able to get this data, to give them all this magnificent information that they can study for the next 20 years. It was one of those that you kind of can't, it's hard to describe how, to be able to be a part of helping make somebody else's dream come true.
What was the pressure to perform like in the atmosphere at NASA?
Nobody's ever asked me a question like that. NASA is a very technical organization. So the pressure to perform technically is pretty high. What I've been helped work on before I retire was to strike a balance when you started moving out of the disciplines into management, of having a good balance between technical and people or leadership, or people call soft skills, because I think that not everybody has the gift to lead and to be, to lead people, and that just because you're really strong technically is not going to make you a good people manager. And so I think taking all of those things into consideration as we would select people is something that I was really working on, because we tended to just promote the strong technical skills into managers, and then they were miserable as people managers, right? They were like, this is not what I wanted to do and spending my career doing. So the pressure to perform is pretty high. And then, to meet budgets and to balance the politics. NASA, like any government organization, survives on the political arena. And so, it has a lot of influence on what programs make it or don't make it, and living in that kind of environment. So, it's pretty high. But I'd say just about anywhere, and particularly when you get into leadership at any company, it's going to be that way. Because the good part about us is we're not profit making. So, it wasn't about making profit, but it was spending taxpayer dollars. So every dollar was precious. Other questions?
During your time span at NASA, I know the government has changed. They tried to transition from spaceflight being only government, and now they're trying to incorporate private industry. So my two questions are, did you experience any of this transition, and do you think it would be a realistic idea that these private companies will actually take up the challenge of space exploration and work with the private sector?
So yes, I was greatly involved in that. In fact, the International Space Station, for those of you who haven't kept up with it, would be very challenged today if it wasn't for the commercial providers like SpaceX and Orbital, and some of those that have flown supplies to the International Space Station. Now, they are government subsidized, right? So the government is buying flights to the International Space Station. So they do have some government dollars that are there. But I think they are going to be the wave of the future, especially in low Earth orbit. And so especially in the space station realm, is going to be almost 100% focused on the commercial providers. The next step, which is hopefully in 2017, is going to be with the commercial providers flying crew to the space station. So I think they're very critical to that. If you took away the government funding from them completely, I don't know. That one's a hard one to call, because spaceflight is very expensive. I say very expensive. I mean, compared to some of the other things that you might think about. And it's not profitable and we don't do space for it to be profitable. We do space exploration for all the new technologies and for the things we're learning and for the exploration itself, not for a profitability. And so for some companies, when it's not profitable, it would be hard for them to stick to it if they didn't have some of the government money that was coming to them buying some of the flights. I won't say impossible, because there's some things that I never thought SpaceX would be the one that would be supplying the International Space Station right now if you'd have asked me that, 10 years ago. And they're doing a good job of that.
Can I ask a question about that? We've got a couple of our alumni work for SpaceX, so we've been watching it pretty closely.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I'm curious about is their Dragon capsule. It's supposed to be the main capsule. What role do you think NASA will have in qualifying that for manned space flight? I mean, will they anyway.
Yes, they will.
What role will they have?
They're part of the oversight of the development on that. They will be part of the certification program. They will evaluate all the data that comes from the certifying the tests for the Dragon, just like they were in the launch vehicle itself. So they are a part of that, because they're not going to put their crew on a vehicle that they aren't comfortable with. And so they will definitely, based on the experiences they've had with shuttle and before, they will use that in helping SpaceX and to try to find the holes and try to find their vulnerabilities, and making sure that when we put crew on there, that we're very confident that it's going to be successful. Nothing's going to be 100%. We weren't 100%. but it's something that you want to make sure that that we stay on top of. So right now, that is, NASA's very engaged in part of that. Now, they are a private company, so we can't tell them what to do, but there's a little incentive there that says if we're going to put our crew on your capsule, then this is what we need. And so, they have the option of flying their own folks. And have talked about that, right? Especially some of their test pilots. Mm-hmm. So, Mark, are we good? We got time for one more?
Anybody else have one more question?
Okay.
You talked about building relationships with people. Is there any way that we can do that? Like any methods that you can come up with that would be helpful, like taking out to dinner or something like that?
I wouldn't go that far. For me, it's really about being personable, right? And just to me, building relationships is getting to know the whole person, right? As opposed to just what they can do for you. And so it's about, knowing about their family, knowing where they came from, knowing that, to the point where you don't want to overdo it, but when I had people that I was managing, particularly, if you knew that they had a sick child, or that they were going through a divorce, or they were going through this or that, and you could manage better knowing that kind of information, and knowing they're going through a hard time right now, so you kind of try to de-stress their work and pick up the slack somewhere else. And so when I talk about building relationships, it's really getting to know the person as a person, not as engineer X or ops guy Y, and just really knowing something about them that kind of helps relate to them. You might have kids the same age, or you might have graduated from the same college, or you might both have elderly parents that you're taking care of, or just something that kind of just builds that connection that kind of makes somebody stand out. It's just kind of like, okay, oh yeah, I know so-and-so. I've talked to them about their whatever. They have kids in college and at the same place I do, or there's a whole lot of different ways, but it's really just getting to know the person as a person, not because of what they do. Okay? Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for the questions.